Stand up, Emily. My mother's standing, and you're just sitting there like you own the damn bus. My husband's voice sliced through the crowded Chicago transit bus like a knife, his hand clamping onto my arm. I was 9 months pregnant, my body a map of aches and exhaustion, yet there I was frozen under the weight of his rage and the stares of strangers. His mother, Margaret, stood behind him, her lips curling into a faint, smug smile that I'd come to know too well. Before I tell you how that moment shattered my world and rebuilt it, drop a comment below with your city. I want to know where you're watching this from. Trust me, what happened next will leave you speechless. My name is Emily Harper, a 32-year-old graphic designer from Chicago's North Side. 3 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever in Daniel Reed, a charismatic tech consultant with a smile that could light up a room. But by that sweltering July afternoon in 2025, with my daughter kicking inside me, I was a shadow of the woman I'd been. That bus ride wasn't just a trip to a prenatal appointment, it was the breaking point of a marriage that had slowly, insidiously stripped me of my voice, my freedom, and my self-worth. Before Daniel, my life was vibrant, a canvas of color and possibility. I ran a small freelance design business, crafting logos and websites for local startups. My apartment in Logan Square was my sanctuary filled with thrift store art shelves of design books, and my tabby cat, Jasper, who'd curl up on my lap while I sketched late into the night. My parents, Ellen and Michael, lived an hour away in Evanston, their cozy home a haven for Sunday brunches, where we'd laugh over my dad's terrible puns and my mom's endless gardening stories. I had friends, Lila, my college roommate, and a tight-knit group from my art co-op who filled my weekends with gallery visits and rooftop barbecues. I was independent, creative, and unapologetically me. Daniel swept into my life at a tech conference where I designed the event's branding. He was the keynote speaker, all charm and confidence, his hazel eyes locking onto mine as he complimented my work. "Your designs don't just catch the eye, they tell a story," he said, handing me his card. Our first date was at a jazz club in Wicker Park, where he listened intently as I rambled about typography and color theory. He sent flowers to my studio the next day, a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, a detail he'd remembered from our conversation. For 6 months he was perfect, attentive, thoughtful, always planning little surprises like a picnic by Lake Michigan or a handwritten note tucked into my sketchbook. But there were cracks, subtle at first. Daniel would frown slightly when I mentioned drinks with Lila, suggesting we spend the evening together instead. "I just miss you, Em." He'd say, his tone warm but edged with something I couldn't name. He'd compliment my bold outfits, bright scarves, quirky earrings, then gently suggest something more professional for client meetings. I brushed it off, charmed by his attention, not seeing the control creeping in. His mother, Margaret, was a force from the start. A retired real estate agent with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes, she lived alone in a pristine condo in Lincoln Park since Daniel's father passed. Daniel called her daily, often stepping away to talk privately. When I met her, her questions were invasive about my income, my family's background, my plans for supporting Daniel's career. "He's destined for big things," she said, her gaze appraising me, like a piece of furniture that didn't quite fit. Daniel laughed it off, Mom's just protective, but her presence grew a shadow over our relationship. After a whirlwind engagement, Daniel proposed on a rooftop overlooking the Chicago skyline, the city lights glittering like a promise. I ignored my parents' advice for a longer courtship. Our wedding was a dream with fairy lights and peonies, but Margaret's influence was everywhere. She chose the venue, overrode my playlist, and insisted on a traditional cake, despite my preference for cupcakes. Daniel deserves the best, she'd say, her voice dripping with judgment. I compromised, wanting harmony, not realizing I was setting a precedent. Post-marriage, the changes were gradual but relentless. Daniel suggested I scale back freelancing to focus on us. When I resisted, he pointed out his 6-figure salary, framing it as practical. Margaret began visiting every weekend, rearranging my kitchen, critiquing my cooking, and reminiscing about Daniel's exes, who knew how to host. My vibrant apartment became their domain. My art supplies pushed to a corner to make room for Margaret's suggestions, a new couch, her antique vases. I felt like a guest in my own life. When I got pregnant, their control tightened. The day I saw those 2 pink lines, I was giddy imagining Daniel's joy. But his reaction was muted, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We need to tell Mom," he said, dialing Margaret before I could process. She arrived the next day with a stack of parenting books and a list of approved baby names, all from her family. At my first ultrasound, she answered the doctor's questions before I could, as if I were invisible. "Emily's been a bit careless with her diet," she told Dr. Patel, while Daniel nodded. I shrank in the exam chair, my voice silenced. By my 9th month, my world was a cage. Daniel monitored my phone, claiming we should share everything. My bank account was merged into his, every purchase scrutinized. Margaret moved into our guest room, her presence suffocating. She chose the nursery's navy and cream theme, dismissing my idea for a whimsical forest mural. "Daniel prefers classic," she said. My friends faded away, Lila's visits were canceled with excuses about my health, and my parents' calls were always on speakerphone, Daniel or Margaret hovering. I was isolated. My confidence eroded my pregnancy, a battleground for their control. That July morning, I woke exhausted, my swollen ankles throbbing. We were headed to a prenatal checkup, my blood pressure worryingly high. Margaret insisted on joining, and Daniel decided we'd take the bus to save money. The bus was packed the air thick with summer heat. I struggled to stand, clutching the handrail, until a kind teenager offered me a seat. I sank into it, relief washing over me. Then Daniel's voice exploded, his hand gripping my arm. "Stand up, Emily, my mother's standing." Margaret's smirk burned into me as the bus fell silent, every eye on us. The silence on that Chicago bus was deafening, a collective holding of breath, as Daniel's grip tightened on my arm. My face burned with shame, not just from his words, but from the weight of every moment I'd let him diminish me. 9 months pregnant, my body screaming for rest, I was paralyzed by the familiar urge to obey, to shrink to avoid his wrath. Margaret stood behind him, her smug smile a silent endorsement, her eyes daring me to defy them. The passengers averted their gazes, phones suddenly fascinating as if my humiliation was just another Tuesday commute. But then a voice clear, steady and unafraid cut through the tension like a blade. "Let go of her arm, young man. You're shaming yourself, not her." All eyes turned to a woman in her late 70s, petite but commanding, her silver hair pulled into a neat chignon. Her name, I'd later learn, was Vivian Carter, a retired social worker with a fire in her eyes that belied her age. She stood 3 rows back, her cane tapping the floor for emphasis. A pregnant woman needs that seat more than anyone. She set her gaze locking onto Daniel, and no man should ever lay a hand on his wife like that. The bus seemed to exhale murmurs, rippling through the crowd. Daniel's face flushed crimson, his grip loosening as he stammered, "This is a family matter." Margaret chimed in, her voice syrupy with false concern. "Emily's not been herself lately. The pregnancy's been hard on her judgment. Their attempt to paint me as irrational stung, but Vivian wasn't having it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a steely calm. "I've seen family matters like this before. Control isn't love and shame isn't care. Let her go." Something snapped inside me. For 3 years, I'd swallowed my voice, convinced myself Daniel's control was protection. Margaret's criticism was guidance. But Vivian's words were a mirror, reflecting the truth I'd buried. I was living in a prison of their making. The passengers' eyes, some sympathetic, some curious, bore into me. But for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. A young woman in a nurse's scrub spoke up. I saw him grab her. That's not okay. A man in a suit offered, "Ma'am, I'll give my seat to your mother-in-law if it's such a big deal." The crowd was turning their silence, breaking into a chorus of support. Daniel's charm, his polished tech consultant persona, faltered. "You're all misunderstanding," he said, forcing a laugh. "Emily's just tired. We're worried about the baby." But Vivian's gaze held him like a vice. "You don't get to rewrite what we saw," she said. The bus driver, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" he asked, looking directly at me. My heart pounded. This was it, the moment to choose myself or sink back into the shadows. I don't want to go with him, I said, my voice trembling but clear. The words felt foreign powerful. Daniel's eyes widened a flicker of panic beneath his anger. Emily, don't be ridiculous. You're hormonal. Let's go home, Margaret added. You're not thinking straight, dear. We're your family. But Vivian stepped between us, her presence a shield. She's made her choice. Respect it. The driver nodded. Ma'am, do you feel safe going home with him? The question pierced me. Safe. I hadn't felt safe in years, not since Daniel started checking my texts, not since Margaret turned my home into her domain. No, I said louder now. I don't. Gasps rippled through the bus. Daniel's face twisted, but before he could speak, Vivian turned to me. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to. Come with me. Without a word, I stood my hand cradling my belly and followed Vivian to the exit. Daniel's voice chased me. You'll regret this, Emily. You've got nothing without me. Margaret's shrill tone followed. You're abandoning your family. But I kept walking, the summer heat hitting me as I stepped onto the sidewalk. The bus doors closed, muffling their voices, and for the first time in years, I breathed freely. Vivian led me to a nearby diner, its neon sign buzzing softly. You're shaking, dear, she said, guiding me to a booth. She ordered me a chamomile tea and a slice of pie, her calm anchoring me as my adrenaline faded. I'm Vivian Carter, she introduced herself. I spent 35 years helping women like you. You're not alone. Her words were a lifeline. I'd never named what Daniel did as abuse control. Yes, but abuse. That was a word for bruises, not the slow erosion of my soul. Yet Vivian saw it instantly. My phone buzzed relentlessly Daniel's calls, Margaret's texts. Come home, Emily. You're putting the baby at risk. You have no money, no place to go. Each message was a jab, but Vivian urged me to turn it off. They'll try to pull you back with fear, she said. Don't let them. She offered me her guest room for the night, a small space with a quilted bed and bookshelves stuffed with novels and social work manuals. Her cat, Mavis, sniffed my shoes curiously, and for a moment I felt safe, unjudged. That night, I barely slept my daughter's kicks, a reminder of the stakes. I had no plan, no money, Daniel controlled our accounts, and no belongings beyond my purse. But I had something new resolve. Vivian woke me with coffee and a plan. We'll call a friend of mine, Sarah Nguyen, a domestic violence advocate. She'll help you navigate this. By noon, Sarah arrived at Vivian's apartment, her arms full of resources, a burner phone, maternity clothes, and a list of shelters. First, we keep you and the baby safe, she said. Then we build a plan. Sarah arranged a checkup with Dr. Lena Morris, an obstetrician who worked with survivors. In her office, I felt seen for the first time in months. Your blood pressure's high, but the baby's strong. Dr. Morris said, her voice kind but firm. Stress is your biggest enemy right now. Stay away from those who cause it. She listened to my birth preferences, something Daniel and Margaret never allowed, and crafted a plan that felt like mine. I called my parents next, my hands trembling as I dialed. Mom, I left Daniel. I said, tears choking me. My mother's voice cracked with relief. We're coming to Chicago. We knew something was wrong. Daniel had called them claiming I was unstable, but they hadn't bought it. You're our daughter, Dad said. We're here. They arrived the next day, renting a hotel room nearby, their presence, a balm to my frayed nerves. Daniel's texts grew darker. You're nothing without me. I'll take the baby. Vivian and Sarah coached me to save every message as evidence. He's showing his true colors, Sarah said. This will help in court. The word court terrified me, but Vivian's steady gaze gave me courage. You're not just fighting for you, she said. You're fighting for your daughter. As I sat in Vivian's living room, Mavis purring beside me, I felt the weight of my choice. I'd left with nothing but the clothes on my back, yet I'd gained something priceless, the chance to reclaim my life. But Daniel wasn't done. I didn't know it then, but he was already plotting to drag me back, and the battle ahead would test every ounce of my strength. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through Vivian's lace curtains, I sat at her kitchen table clutching a mug of tea. My phone, now on a burner line Sarah provided, buzzed with a single message from Lila, my old college roommate M. I heard what happened. I'm here. Where are you? The words cracked open a dam of guilt I'd let Daniel push Lila away, canceling plans with flimsy excuses until our friendship faded. But her message was a lifeline proof that not all bridges were burned. I typed back, hands shaking, I'm safe. Can we meet? Vivian nodded approvingly. Rebuild your circle, Emily. You'll need it. By noon, Lila was at Vivian's door, her familiar freckled face a mix of worry and relief. She hugged me gently, mindful of my swollen belly. I should have fought harder to stay in touch, she said, tears in her eyes. Daniel always had an excuse when I called. I told her everything: the bus incident, Daniel's control, Margaret's suffocating presence. Lila listened, her jaw tightening. You're not going back, she said firmly. You're staying with me until we figure this out. Her apartment in Andersonville, a cozy walk-up filled with plants and art, became my next sanctuary. Sarah Nguyen, the advocate, mapped out the legal steps. We'll file for an emergency protective order, she explained. It'll keep Daniel and Margaret from contacting you or coming near you. The thought of facing Daniel in court made my stomach churn, but Sarah's confidence steadied me. You have evidence, the texts, the bus witnesses, your medical records showing stress-related health issues. We'll build a strong case. My parents, now settled in a nearby Airbnb, offered to cover legal fees, their support, a quiet promise that I wasn't alone. The emergency hearing was set for 3 days later. Leslie Monroe, a pro bono attorney from a women's legal aid group, took my case. Her sharp eyes and calm demeanor made me trust her instantly. Daniel will try to spin a narrative, she warned. He'll play the concerned husband, claim you're unstable. But judges see through that. I spent hours with Leslie documenting every detail: Daniel's control over my finances, locking my debit card when I overspent on groceries, his insistence on approving my outfits, Margaret's relentless criticism, calling my designs childish while rearranging my studio. Writing it down was like peeling back layers of denial. The abuse was clear, undeniable. The courthouse was a cold, imposing building in downtown Chicago. Walking in, I felt my daughter kick, grounding me. Leslie squeezed my hand as we entered the courtroom, where Daniel and Margaret sat with a slick attorney, Victor Crane. Daniel looked the part of a grieving husband. Dark circles under his eyes, a tailored suit, his voice soft as he spoke to his lawyer. Margaret played the doting grandmother-to-be, clutching a tissue. But I saw the truth in their eyes. Daniel's calculated calm, Margaret's barely concealed contempt. When I took the stand, my voice wavered at first. I recounted the bus incident, Daniel's grip, his shouted demands, Margaret's smirk. I described the years of control, how Daniel monitored my phone, how Margaret dictated our home's every detail. Leslie presented screenshots of Daniel's texts. You'll crawl back when you realize you're nothing. The judge, a stern woman with gray-streaked hair, listened intently, her expression unreadable. Daniel's attorney countered, claiming I was emotionally volatile due to pregnancy hormones. My client was protecting his wife, an unborn child, Victor said. The bus incident was a misunderstanding, born of concern. Margaret testified next, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. Emily's been erratic lately. We've been so worried about the baby. Daniel followed his performance, Oscar-worthy. I love my wife, he said, his voice breaking. I just want her and our daughter safe. Leslie dismantled their narrative with precision, presenting hospital records showing my elevated blood pressure and witness statements from the bus, a nurse, a student, even the driver who confirmed Daniel's aggression. Vivian's testimony was a turning point. I've seen abusers like him for decades, she said. Control, humiliation, isolation, that's not love. It's power. The judge granted the emergency protective order, barring Daniel and Margaret from contacting me. Based on the evidence, Ms. Harper is at risk of further abuse, she ruled. This order holds until the full hearing in 4 weeks. Daniel's mask slipped for a moment, his eyes flashing with rage, but he quickly resumed his concerned husband act. As we left, I heard him whisper to Victor, "She'll come back. She always does." His confidence chilled me, but Leslie's voice cut through my fear. "He's wrong. You're stronger than he knows." Back at Lila's, I focused on preparing for my daughter. My parents helped me set up a crib in her spare room, painting the walls a soft lavender. My choice, not Margaret's. Dr. Morris monitored my health closely, noting my blood pressure was stabilizing. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Your body's responding to the lack of stress." But Daniel wasn't idle. He launched a social media campaign posting about his unstable wife, who'd abandoned him, tagging mutual acquaintances to sway them. Margaret called my extended family, claiming I'd been brainwashed by a women's shelter. Some believed them, but others, like my cousin Jenna, who'd always disliked Daniel, reached out with support. Then came the first twist. Lila found a hidden tracker app on my old phone, which Daniel had access to before I switched to the burner. He'd been monitoring my location even after I left. Sarah reported it to the police, adding it to the protective order violation log. The discovery shook me. How long had he been watching? But it also fueled my resolve. I wasn't just escaping for me, I was protecting my daughter from a man who saw us as possessions. A week later, contractions started during a late-night call with Leslie about the upcoming hearing. They were mild at first, but by dawn, they were undeniable. Lila drove me to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where Dr. Morris met us. My parents arrived, their faces a mix of worry and hope. The labor was grueling, 12 hours of pain and fear. But when Dr. Morris placed my daughter on my chest, her tiny cries echoing everything else faded. "Hello, Ava," I whispered, naming her after my grandmother, a woman who'd always been my rock. Ava's blue eyes met mine, and I vowed she'd grow up free. Hospital security was tight, thanks to Sarah's coordination. Daniel tried to enter the maternity ward hours later, claiming his right as a father. "She's my daughter!" he shouted loud enough for me to hear from my room. The charge nurse, briefed on the protective order, barred him. "Sir, you need to leave or we'll call the police." Margaret tried next, arriving with a teddy bear and a sob story about being a grandmother. Security turned her away too. Holding Ava, I felt a fierce protectiveness. They wouldn't touch her. Not now, not ever. As I recovered, Daniel's threats escalated. He sent an email through a friend's account. "You can't keep Ava from me. I'll fight for her." The words were a gut punch, but Vivian's voice echoed in my mind. "You're fighting for her future." I forwarded the email to Leslie, who added it to our case. The full hearing loomed, and I knew Daniel was preparing a war. But so was I. Holding Ava in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine, I felt a clarity I hadn't known in years. The hospital room, with its soft beeping monitors and the scent of antiseptic, was my fortress. But outside, Daniel was rallying his forces, and the war for my freedom and Ava's future was just beginning. Lila's apartment became our temporary home, its sunlit windows and cluttered charm a stark contrast to the sterile control of Daniel's condo. My parents stayed close, their presence a steady anchor as I navigated motherhood and the looming legal battle. Sarah Nguyen and Leslie Monroe, my attorney, were my generals, plotting every move with precision. But Daniel's shadow lingered his threats, seeping through the cracks of my new life. Leslie prepared me for the permanent restraining order hearing set for a month after Ava's birth. Daniels hired a high-powered attorney, Victor Crane. She said, her voice calm but serious. "He'll try to paint you as unfit, mentally unstable, financially dependent. But we have a strong case: the bus incident, the texts, the tracker app, your medical records." She handed me a folder of evidence, including statements from bus passengers, and Dr. Morris's notes on my stress-induced hypertension. "You're not just a victim," Emily Leslie said. "You're a survivor with a story the judge will hear." Daniel's campaign to discredit me was relentless. He posted on social media framing himself as a devoted father, separated from his newborn by a vindictive wife. He tagged colleagues from my old design co-op, spinning tales of my erratic behavior during pregnancy. Margaret called my aunt in Wisconsin claiming I'd joined a radical feminist group that turned me against my family. Some bought their narrative old clients unfollowed me online, but others saw through it. My cousin Jenna texted Daniels full of it. I'm on your side. Lila's co-op friends organized a meal train dropping off casseroles and baby clothes. Their support, a quiet rebellion against Daniels' lies. The hearing was a pressure cooker. The Chicago courthouse loomed larger this time, its marble halls echoing with the weight of what was at stake. Ava stayed with my parents, her absence a physical ache, but I needed to focus. Daniel sat across the room, his suit pristine, his expression a calculated mix of sorrow and sincerity. Margaret, beside him, wore a navy dress and a practiced look of concern, her tissue dabbing at dry eyes. Victor Crane opened with a narrative I dreaded Miss Harper has struggled with anxiety, exacerbated by pregnancy. My client was merely protecting his family. When I took the stand, my voice was steady, fueled by Ava's face in my mind. I recounted the bus incident in vivid detail, Daniel's grip, his shouted demands, Margaret's smirk. I laid bare the years of control, how Daniel locked my bank card, how he and Margaret dictated my every move from my wardrobe to my friendships. Leslie presented the evidence, methodically threatening texts, "You're nothing without me." The tracker app's data log and Vivian's expert testimony as a retired social worker. Ms. Harper endured a pattern of coercive control, Vivian said, her voice cutting through the room. The bus was not an isolated event. It was a public display of an established dynamic. Victor's cross-examination was brutal. "Ms. Harper, isn't it true you've always been sensitive, prone to overreacting?" he asked, his tone patronizing. "Didn't Mr. Reed provide for you financially, allowing you to pursue your little design hobby?" The jab stung, but I held his gaze. My hobby was a thriving business until Daniel controlled my finances, I said. And sensitivity isn't weakness, it's what makes me human. The judge's eyes flickered with interest, her pen pausing. Margaret's testimony was a masterclass in manipulation. "I only wanted to help Emily," she said, her voice quivering. "She was so overwhelmed and I feared for my grandchild. But Leslie was ready. Mrs. Reed, did you ever ask Emily what she wanted for the nursery? Or did you choose it yourself?" Margaret faltered, admitting she'd taken initiative. Leslie pressed further, revealing Margaret's role in isolating me, including intercepting Lila's visits. The bus driver's statement corroborated my story, describing Daniel's aggression and Margaret's complicity. The judge's ruling was a lifeline. "The evidence clearly shows a pattern of coercive control and emotional abuse," she said. "The permanent restraining order is granted prohibiting Mr. Reed and Mrs. Reed from contacting Ms. Harper or her child. A custody hearing will determine visitation." Daniel's face tightened, his charm cracking, while Margaret's tissue finally saw real tears. As we left, Victor whispered to Daniel, but I caught the words, "We'll appeal. She can't win forever." Back at Lila's, I dove into rebuilding. With my parents' help, I rented a small apartment in Edgewater, its bay windows overlooking a quiet street. I furnished it with secondhand finds, painting Ava's room a sunny yellow, a color I chose. My design business, dormant under Daniel's control, flickered back to life. I took on small projects, working while Ava napped, her soft breaths my motivation. Lila watched Ava during client calls, her laughter filling the apartment as she played peekaboo. My parents visited daily, my mom teaching me to swaddle my dad assembling a bookshelf with his signature puns. But Daniel's shadow persisted. He violated the restraining order once by sending flowers through a mutual friend claiming they were for Ava, and once by driving past Lila's apartment, caught on a neighbor's security camera. Sarah reported both incidents, strengthening our case. Then came the twist that nearly broke me. Daniel filed for joint custody, claiming I was alienating Ava from him. Victor argued I was unfit, citing my unstable decision to leave and my reliance on charity, my parents' support. The audacity floored me. He'd controlled my finances, yet now used my recovery against me. Leslie countered with a fierce strategy. She subpoenaed Daniel's financial records, revealing he'd siphoned money into a hidden account during our marriage, leaving me with nothing. Dr. Morris testified about the health risks of my high-stress pregnancy, linking it to Daniel's control. The bus passenger's statements painted a vivid picture of his public aggression. But the real blow came from an unexpected source. Daniel's former assistant, Claire, contacted Leslie. "I saw how he treated Emily at work events," she said. "He belittled her in front of colleagues, called her scatterbrained. I'll testify." Claire's courage stunned me, a stranger risking her job to speak my truth. The custody hearing was set for Ava's 3-month mark. As the date approached, I felt a mix of dread and defiance. Daniel's charm had fooled so many, but I was no longer the woman who shrank under his gaze. I was a mother, a survivor, and I was ready to fight. Ava's future depended on it, and so did mine. But Daniel had one last card to play, one that would test my resolve in ways I never imagined. The custody hearing loomed like a storm cloud over my new life in Edgewater. Ava, now 3 months old, was my anchor. Her gummy smiles and curious coos filled the apartment with light, even as Daniel's threats darkened my horizon. His petition for joint custody was a calculated move, not out of love for Ava, but to reassert control over me. Leslie Monroe, my attorney, was relentless, building a fortress of evidence: Daniel's threatening texts, the tracker app, the bus incident witnesses, and Claire's testimony about his workplace belittling. But Daniel's attorney, Victor Crane, was a master of spin, painting me as an unstable mother who'd fled a loving home. As the hearing approached, I braced for a fight, unaware of the twist that would redefine my story. The courtroom was a battleground, its air thick with tension. Ava stayed with Lila, her absence a hollow ache, but I needed clarity to face Daniel. He sat across the room, his face a mask of paternal concern, while Margaret's eyes glinted with vindictive hope. Victor opened with a gut punch. Ms. Harper has no stable income, relies on her parents, and has shown reckless behavior by abandoning her marriage. He presented a doctored email allegedly from me confessing to mental health struggles during pregnancy. My heart sank. The email was a fabrication, but its polished wording was convincing. Leslie's response was surgical. She debunked the email as a forgery, tracing it to an account linked to Daniel's IP address. "Mr. Reed has a history of manipulation," she said, presenting the hidden bank account records showing he'd siphoned our savings. Claire's testimony was a bombshell. "Daniel mocked Emily's designs at a company gala," she said. "He told colleagues she was too emotional to handle real work." The judge's brow furrowed, her pen moving swiftly. Dr. Morris testified about my pregnancy stress, linking it directly to Daniel's control, while Vivian's expert analysis of coercive abuse sealed the narrative. "This isn't about custody," she said. "It's about power." Then came the unexpected twist. During a recess, Leslie received a tip from an anonymous source, a former colleague of Daniel's, who'd overheard him bragging about teaching Emily a lesson through the custody fight. The colleague, risking his career, provided a recorded conversation where Daniel admitted to planting the tracker app and forging the email to break me. Leslie played the recording in court, Daniel's voice chillingly clear. "She'll come crawling back when she sees she can't win." The courtroom gasped, and Daniel's composure shattered, his face paling as Victor scrambled to object. Margaret's tissue was useless now, her shock genuine. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. "The evidence demonstrates a clear pattern of abuse and manipulation," she said. "Ms. Harper is granted sole physical custody of Ava, with Mr. Reed limited to supervised visitation pending behavioral evaluation. The restraining order remains permanent." Margaret's sob echoed, but Daniel was silent, his defeat palpable. As we left, Victor muttered about an appeal, but Leslie whispered, "He's got nothing left." "You've won." The victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. Back at my apartment, I held Ava, her warmth grounding me. My parents, Lila and Vivian, celebrated with me, their laughter filling the space. I rebuilt my design business, taking on clients who valued my creativity. A local nonprofit hired me to brand a campaign for domestic violence awareness, a project that felt like a calling. I moved into a modest 2-bedroom house in Ravenswood, its backyard a haven for Ava's first steps. Lila painted a forest mural in her room, fulfilling my dream from the marriage. My parents' now closer hosted barbecues, their pride in me, unspoken but clear. Daniel faded from our lives. His supervised visits dwindled, his interest waning when control was no longer possible. Margaret sent letters through third parties claiming grandmother's rights, but my lawyer shut them down. The anonymous colleague's recording, later revealed to be from a whistleblower in Daniel's firm, sparked an internal investigation, costing him his job. Social media whispers painted him as a cautionary tale, his charm, no match for the truth. A year later, I stood before a group at the Chicago Women's Shelter, sharing my story. I was on that bus, silenced by shame, I said. But one voice, Vivian's, gave me courage. You have that voice inside you, too. The room filled with women like me nodded their eyes, reflecting my own journey. I launched a website, A Seat for Courage, offering resources for survivors, legal guides, housing tips, job leads. It went viral, shared by thousands, a beacon for those trapped in silence. Vivian, now a surrogate grandmother to Ava, joined me at shelter events, her cane adorned with stickers Ava chose. At Ava's second birthday, she gave her a tiny sketchbook, whispering, "Draw your world, little one." Ava's giggles, her fearless curiosity, were my proof that the cycle of control ended with me. I taught her to say no thank you to pushy playmates, to name her feelings, to trust her voice, lessons I'd learned the hard way. The lesson of my journey isn't just survival, it's defiance. Love doesn't demand your silence, it lifts your voice. Control isn't care, it's a cage. If you're watching and see yourself in my story, know this: you are enough. Your courage, even if it's just a whisper, can change everything. And if you've never faced this, be the Vivian in someone's story. Speak up, act care. One moment of bravery can rewrite a life.